All right, ready to dive in. Today we're tackling cryptocurrency.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
Is it the future of finance, or are we all just headed for another one of those speculative bubbles?
A question on everyone's mind these days.
For sure. And we've got two great sources to help us unpack all of this. We'll be looking at The Motley Fool. They're pretty well known for financial advice.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
And then we'll also be digging into some data and trends from GWI.
Nice. Should be interesting to see what they have to say.
Definitely. So let's jump right in. I think we got to start with crypto has been on a wild ride these past few years.
It's been a roller coaster, that's for sure. Ups, downs, sideways, you name it.
Exactly. Makes you kind of dizzy just thinking about it.
Haha, yeah. But what I find fascinating is how closely crypto often mirrors the stock market.
Oh,
yeah. It's like they're dancing to the same tune, but crypto's moves are way more amplified, you know? Mm-hmm. The Motley Fool article actually points this out. Even with all the crazy swings, crypto has generally followed the same trends as the S&P 500, just with like way bigger jumps and dips.
So like when the stock market goes up a little, crypto shoots to the moon.
Pretty much. And when the market takes a hit, crypto feels it even harder.
Makes sense. It's still connected to the overall economic climate, just more sensitive.
Exactly. Remember back in 2021 when everything was booming, crypto absolutely exploded, and then 2022 came around?
Well, let's just say it wasn't pretty for anyone.
Oof. Yeah, I think we all felt that one.
Big time.
But speaking of big events, Motley Fool also talked about a couple of things that happened this year that really shook things up in the crypto world. First, there was that Bitcoin halving back in April.
Right.
Which basically means the rate at which new Bitcoins are created gets cut in half. And historically, this event has often been followed by a surge in price.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Supply and demand, right? Exactly. Less supply, more demand, prices go up.
Makes sense.
And then we also had the introduction of those Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs.
Ah, yes, the ETFs. That was huge. I mean, before that, if you wanted to invest in crypto, it was a whole ordeal. You had to go through these specialized exchanges, set up a digital wallet.
It was like trying to navigate a maze.
Totally. But these ETFs really simplified everything. Suddenly, everyday investors could easily get in on the action through their regular brokerage account.
Buying a stock, basically. Exactly.
And the Motley Fool argues that these ETFs, along with things like the Bitcoin halving, could have a really lasting impact on the future of crypto.
I can see that. It makes it way more accessible to a much wider audience.
For sure.
But even beyond those specific events, both of our sources seem to agree that there are these bigger forces at play that are going to shape crypto's future. And the one that seems to be on everyone's mind is regulation. Governments all over the world are still kind of scratching their heads trying to figure out how to handle this whole cryptocurrency thing.
Absolutely. It's like this brand new beast, and they're not quite sure how to tame it.
Right. Like, do they embrace it? Do they try to stifle it?
It's a tough balancing act. On the one hand, you've got the incredible potential of crypto, the innovation, the disruption, the whole decentralized thing. But on the other hand, you've got these very real concerns about things like money laundering, fraud, and what it could all mean for the stability of, like, the global financial system, you know?
So many moving parts.
Yeah, it's complex.
So how do you encourage innovation and protect people at the same time? That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And we're starting to see some actual movement on that front, finally.
Oh, yeah.
The Motley Fool mentioned that here in the U.S., the government's put together a special task force specifically to tackle crypto regulation. And there's already a bunch of bills making their way through Congress.
Wow. So things are actually starting to happen.
It seems like it. Plus, we can't forget about that Ripple Labs case from this past summer.
Yes, the Ripple case. That was a major victory for the crypto world. Basically, the court decided that Ripple's XRP token, which is a type of cryptocurrency, just for anyone listening who might not be familiar, wasn't a security.
Which is a big deal, right?
Huge deal. Because if it had been classified as a security, it would have been subject to all these stricter regulations. This ruling could really change the game for how other cryptocurrencies are treated down the line.
So it's like setting a precedent.
Exactly. It's a big win for the crypto industry and could have some serious ripple effects, no pun intended, on the future.
So we've got regulation as this big question mark hanging over everything. But then there's also the whole question of mass adoption. Will we see crypto actually go mainstream? Like, will we be buying our coffee with Bitcoin anytime soon?
That's the dream, isn't it?
It is. But is it realistic?
Well, the Motley Fool seems cautiously optimistic. They pointed out that we're seeing more and more retailers starting to accept crypto payments. And they specifically mentioned Ripple. They've been having a lot of success with international payments. But then GWI comes in with their data, and they're saying there's still a ton of uncertainty and different viewpoints about where all of this is headed.
So it's like we're at a crossroads.
Exactly. Everyone's trying to figure out where crypto fits into the big picture. And this uncertainty creates this really interesting tension that GWI highlights in their data. Investors, they're excited about crypto's potential, but they're also really wary of the risks and what impact regulation might have.
They want it to succeed, but they want it to be done responsibly.
Exactly. And it's not just investors who are grappling with this, governments are too. It's this constant push and pull between the desire for innovation and the need for stability.
It's like everyone's dipping their toes in the water, but they're not quite ready to dive in head first.
Perfect analogy. And this hesitation, it's understandable, especially when you consider the two very different visions of crypto's future that our sources paint. On the one hand, you've got the optimistic view, the bull case.
All right, give me some reasons to be bullish on crypto.
Well, the Motley Fool argues that regulation, even if it's strict, could actually be a good thing. It could bring legitimacy and stability to the market.
Okay, interesting.
And that could attract even more investors and encourage businesses to actually adopt crypto. Plus, they say with smarter regulators, there's a better chance of creating a system that actually works for everyone, investors, consumers, businesses, the whole 9 yards.
So regulation leads to legitimacy. Legitimacy leads to wider adoption. And wider adoption means crypto goes mainstream. Got it.
Exactly.
Makes sense. But what about the other side of the coin? What does the bear case look like?
Well, the bears argue that too much regulation could actually kill the goose that laid the golden egg. They're worried that it could stifle crypto's whole decentralized nature, which is kind of its whole selling point.
Right. That makes sense.
They're afraid governments might crack down on it, thinking it's just a tool for illegal activities. And if retailers are hesitant to accept it because of the volatility, well, that could really limit crypto's potential to become this, everyday payment method.
That's a valid concern.
It is.
And then GWI chimes in and adds to that by pointing out some real-world issues that could throw a wrench in the works. They talked about things like security breaches, eroding public trust in crypto.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And even the rise of quantum computing, which some experts think could actually pose a threat to the security of blockchain systems, which is like the backbone of crypto.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms we could open.
It is. But I think the point is there are definitely some legitimate risks and challenges that need to be addressed.
For sure.
And this is where we run into what I'm calling the investor paradox. GWI's data shows that investors actually want regulation. They see it as a way to bring stability and legitimacy to the market. But at the same time, they're worried that regulation could undermine the very things that drew them to crypto in the first place, like that whole decentralization and anonymity thing. It's like this catch-22. They're both for and against the same thing.
It really highlights how we're still in the very early stages of figuring out what role crypto will ultimately play in our lives,
It's like wanting the freedom of the open road, but also wanting the safety of traffic lights and guardrails.
Haha. Exactly.
Before we move on to the role of brands in all of this, I want to circle back to something both articles touched on. How crypto has moved from being this fringe thing on the internet to something way more mainstream.
It's remarkable, isn't it? What was once considered this weird, geeky thing is now being talked about everywhere in the news, in investment circles, even at, family dinners.
Yeah, my grandma asked me about Bitcoin at Thanksgiving last year.
See, it's everywhere. And the Motley Fool made the point that those Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, those were a game changer. They opened the floodgates for institutional investors and even people who were initially skeptical of crypto. Yeah, it was like crypto got the stamp of approval from the traditional financial world.
And GWI's data really supports that. They show that the demographics of crypto investors are changing too. We're seeing more and more older generations getting involved.
It's not just a young person's game anymore.
It's going mainstream.
It is.
So what do you think is driving all of this? Why are so many people suddenly interested in crypto?
Well, I think there's definitely a growing awareness. With all the media coverage and companies accepting it as payment, it's getting harder and harder to ignore.
Yeah, and then there's that FOMO factor.
The fear of missing out.
Exactly. When you hear all these stories about people making a killing with crypto, you can't help but wonder if you're missing the boat.
Right. I think we've all felt that pang of FOMO at some point.
For sure. But beyond the hype and the FOMO, I think there's also a genuine belief among some people that crypto represents a real shift in the way we think about money and finance.
Absolutely. For some people, it's about breaking free from the traditional financial system, which they feel has let them down in the past.
Taking back control.
Exactly. And for others, it goes beyond just the money. It's about being part of this movement that values things like decentralization, transparency, and individual empowerment.
So it's like a mix of financial motivations, social trends, and a dash of ideology.
You got it. It's a pretty fascinating mix of factors that have brought crypto from the fringes to the mainstream.
So we've covered the crazy ups and downs, the regulatory landscape, the bull case versus the bear case, and how crypto's gone mainstream. I think it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, or maybe we should call it the brand and the blockchain. What role are brands playing in all of this, and what do our sources have to say about it?
Welcome back to our crypto deep dive.
Before the break, we were just starting to get into how brands are stepping into the crypto world.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how they're navigating this whole new landscape, you know? One thing that really jumped out at me from GWI's research was this idea that crypto investors actually seem to trust payment companies and exchanges more than governments when it comes to regulation.
Wait, really? That's surprising.
It is, right. You'd think people would naturally look to governments to set the rules and make sure everything's on the up and up.
Yeah, for sure.
But then you have to remember, Bitcoin, the whole idea behind it was born out of this distrust of centralized institutions, especially banks and governments. So asking a government to regulate crypto almost feels like, I don't know, it's like going against the grain, you know?
It's like asking the fox to guard the hen house, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if people are kind of wary of government regulation, what role can brands play in all of this?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Well, GWI suggests that brands, especially those that already have a strong reputation and a history of being trustworthy, they can actually act as a bridge between traditional finance and this sometimes intimidating world of crypto.
Okay, I like that.
They're like the friendly tour guides in this strange new land.
Right. Helping people understand this complex world of crypto, explaining what it is, how it works, and how to use it safely.
Exactly. And think about it. If you're brand new to crypto, it can be so overwhelming. All the technical jargon, complex concepts, a million different coins and tokens, it's easy to feel lost.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like trying to learn a new language.
Right. But now imagine a brand you already trust, like Venmo, steps in and offers a simple, intuitive way to buy and sell crypto. Suddenly, it doesn't seem so daunting.
Yeah, it's all about that sense of familiarity.
Exactly. It's like seeing a friendly face in a crowd.
And it's not just about making it easier to use, is it? GWI also talked about the role of education.
Absolutely. Brands can use their platforms and their reach to provide really clear, unbiased information about crypto. They can help people understand the risks and the rewards and empower them to make informed decisions.
Education is key, especially in a space like this, where there's so much hype and misinformation floating around. It's important for brands to be responsible, not just pushing crypto as some get-rich-quick scheme.
I completely agree. It's about empowerment, not exploitation. It's about creating a sustainable ecosystem that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
So brands can help educate consumers and build trust. But what about the challenges they might face as they navigate this crypto world? It can't be all smooth sailing, right?
Definitely not. Both the Motley Fool and GWI talk about the constantly shifting regulatory landscape as one of the biggest hurdles for brands. Like trying to build a house on shifting sands, you never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. We talked earlier about how the rules are still being written. That's going to be tough for brands to deal with.
It makes planning and executing a strategy incredibly difficult. Another challenge is the volatility of crypto. Those wild price swings can be a major headache for brands trying to, integrate crypto into their existing products and services.
It's true. I can't imagine trying to run a business when the value of your assets is constantly bouncing up and down like a yo-yo.
Right. And it's not just price volatility. There's also the technological risk. Crypto is still a relatively new technology. Security, scalability, user experience, those are all ongoing challenges.
It's a high-stakes game for sure. But I imagine the potential rewards are pretty enticing for brands that can figure it out.
Absolutely. There's a huge opportunity to tap into this rapidly growing market. Crypto is becoming more and more mainstream, and there's a ton of demand for products and services that make it easier to buy, sell, and use. It's like the early days of the internet. Everyone knew it was going to be big, but no one was quite sure how it would all play out.
So for brands, it's all about staying ahead of the curve, not getting left behind.
Exactly. Brands that embrace crypto and find creative ways to integrate it can really position themselves as innovators and leaders.
Think of all the new customers they could attract, the brand loyalty they could build, even the entirely new revenue streams they could create.
It's a huge opportunity.
Okay, that's pretty compelling. But it sounds like it takes a certain kind of brand to really succeed in this space, one that's willing to take risks and embrace the unknown.
It definitely takes vision, courage, and a willingness to, embrace change. But for brands that are up for the challenge, the potential rewards are massive.
It's like they're pioneers venturing into a new frontier. And speaking of new frontiers, I think it's time to talk about the evolution of crypto from this fringe movement to a more mainstream investment option. Both The Motley Fool and GWI touched on this, and it's such a fascinating part of the story.
It really is. Just a few years ago, crypto was seen as this thing for tech geeks and libertarians. It was this mysterious underground world that most people didn't understand or even want to understand.
It had a bit of a Wild West reputation, didn't it?
It definitely did. But things have changed so much. Now, cryptocurrency is a regular topic on the financial news, in investment forums, even at family gatherings.
Right. My grandma asked me about Bitcoin at Thanksgiving last year.
Exactly. It's everywhere. And the Motley Fool argues that the arrival of those Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, those played a huge role in this shift towards mainstream acceptance.
It's like those ETFs gave crypto this stamp of approval from the traditional financial world. Suddenly, It wasn't this weird, obscure asset anymore.
Right. You could buy and sell it through your regular brokerage account, just like any other stock.
It became so much more accessible.
Exactly. And that brought a flood of new investors into the market.
And GWI's data really backs this up. They highlight how the demographics of crypto investors are changing, with more and more older generations getting involved. It's not just a young person's game anymore.
It's amazing, isn't it? More and more people across all these different age groups and backgrounds, they're starting to recognize the potential of crypto.
So, what do you think is driving this shift? Why are so many people suddenly interested in crypto?
Well, I think there's definitely a growing awareness of what crypto is and what it can do. With all the media attention and businesses starting to accept it as payment, it's becoming harder to ignore.
Right. It's like if you can't beat them, join them.
Haha, exactly. And then, of course, there's that FOMO factor, the fear of missing out.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
When you hear stories of people making a ton of money from crypto, it's natural to wonder if you're missing out on something big.
I've definitely felt that myself.
I think we all have at some point. But I think beyond the hype and the FOMO, there's also a genuine belief among a lot of people that crypto represents a fundamental change in how we think about money and finance.
It's like a way to break free from the traditional financial system, a system that many feel hasn't served them well.
Exactly. And for some, it's more than just the money. It's about aligning themselves with this movement that values decentralization, transparency, and individual empowerment.
So it's like a combination of financial motivations, social trends, and a bit of ideology thrown in for good measure.
You got it. It's a really interesting mix of factors that have brought crypto from the fringes to the mainstream.
It's been a fascinating evolution to watch. Now, I think we need to address the big question that's been looming over this whole discussion, the role of regulation. We've touched on it throughout the episode, but it deserves a closer look.
I agree. Regulation is probably the single most important factor that will determine the future of cryptocurrency. And as we've seen, it's a really complex and constantly evolving landscape.
Both the Motley Fool and GWI highlighted this interesting paradox when it comes to regulation in crypto. On one hand, investors recognize that some level of regulation is needed to bring stability and legitimacy to the market.
Right. They want some reassurance that there are rules in place to protect them from fraud and manipulation. They want to see crypto become a more accepted and integrated part of the financial system.
But on the other hand, they're also wary of too much regulation, especially if it's coming from governments. They're worried it could stifle innovation and limit freedom and basically undermine the whole decentralized nature of crypto.
It's a classic dilemma, the tension between freedom and security. And it's a dilemma that policymakers all over the world are grappling with right now.
So what are some of the big regulatory questions on the table right now?
Well, one of the biggest ones is classification. How should cryptocurrencies be categorized from a legal and regulatory perspective? Are they securities like stocks and bonds? Are they commodities like gold and oil? Are they currencies like dollars and euros?
That's a big one, because how they're classified will determine which regulations apply.
Exactly. And there are no easy answers. Different countries are taking different approaches, and even within a single country, you can find conflicting viewpoints among different regulatory bodies.
The Motley Fool mentioned that Ripple Labs case, saying it could have a big impact on how crypto is regulated here in the US. What exactly happened there again?
Oh, right, yeah. The court ruled that Ripple's XRP token wasn't a security. And this was huge because if it had been classified as a security, it would have been subject to all sorts of stricter regulations. This ruling could set a precedent for how other cryptos are classified.
So it's a big win for the crypto industry.
It is, but it's also likely to trigger even more legal challenges and regulatory debates, so.
Sounds like the regulatory landscape is still very much a work in progress.
It is, and this uncertainty is one of the biggest challenges facing the industry right now. Businesses are hesitant to make big investments until they have a clearer picture of the rules of the game.
I get it. It would be like trying to play a game without knowing all the rules.
Exactly. And investors are feeling pretty cautious too. It's hard to make informed decisions when the regulatory goalposts keep moving.
Totally. And it goes beyond just classification too. There are also questions about taxation, consumer protection, anti-money laundering measures, preventing market manipulation.
It's a lot to figure out.
It is. Sounds like this is going to be an ongoing conversation for a while.
Oh, for sure. But I think it's important for everyone to stay informed and engaged in these conversations, you know? The future of cryptocurrency is going to be shaped by the decisions that are made today. So it's crucial that we all have a voice in this process.
That's a great point. Staying informed and engaged is key.
Yeah.
You can't just sit back and wait for things to happen.
Exactly. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of crypto.
All right, welcome back for the final stretch of our crypto deep dive.
Yeah, can you believe how much we've already covered?
Seriously, from those crazy price swings to figuring out what role brands might play in all this, to navigating the regulatory Wild West and how crypto went from this fringe thing to like a mainstream investment.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. But we're not done yet. There's still this one big piece we got to talk about.
A big kahuna.
The long-term implications of all of this. We're talking about the potential for crypto to fundamentally change things, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, color me intrigued. When you say fundamental change, what kind of future are we actually talking about here? Like, what could a crypto-powered world actually look like?
Well, we're still in the early days, right? So it's kind of like peering into a crystal ball a little bit. But if we look at what we've learned from the Motley Fool and GWI and think about the trends we're already seeing, we can start to like piece together some pretty interesting scenarios.
Okay, I'm ready to hear some scenarios. Let's start with the individual level. How could crypto actually change our everyday lives down the road?
Well, one area I think we could see some really big changes is in how we manage our money, our finances.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Imagine being able to send money to anyone, anywhere in the world instantly with no banks, no crazy fees, just boom, done.
Okay, that would be amazing. Especially for people who send money back home to their families overseas. Those remittance fees can be brutal.
Exactly. Crypto could make financial services so much more accessible and affordable for everyone, no matter where they live or how much money they have.
Now, that would be a game changer.
For sure.
I remember the Motley Fool mentioned how some retailers are starting to accept crypto payments.
Yep.
Do you think that'll become more common? Like, will we actually be buying our groceries with Bitcoin someday?
It's totally possible. If crypto keeps gaining traction and the technology keeps improving, I think we could see a future where paying with crypto is just as normal as using a credit card.
Okay, I gotta admit, I'm starting to get a little excited about this crypto-powered future.
It's definitely exciting stuff, but we got to be real. There are going to be some bumps in the road, some risks.
Yeah, for sure.
It can't all be sunshine and rainbows.
Okay, so what are some of the potential downsides? What should people be aware of?
Well, one of the biggest concerns with crypto is security, because transactions are irreversible. If someone hacks your digital wallet or you lose your private key, your money is gone, like poof, just like that.
Wow, that's kind of scary. It's like losing your physical wallet, but with way higher stake.
Exactly. And then there's the volatility issue, which we talked about earlier. Those wild price swings make crypto risky for investors and businesses.
Right.
It's a double-edged sword.
GWI's data showed that investors actually want regulation, even though they're a bit wary of it at the same time. Do you think regulation could help minimize some of these risks?
It definitely could. Regulation could help stabilize the market, protect investors from those scams and rug pulls you hear about, and prevent illegal activities.
Okay.
But it's all about finding the right balance. Too much regulation, and you could stifle innovation and hinder the growth of the whole industry.
So it's a balancing act, just like with everything else in the crypto world.
Pretty much.
Okay, we've talked about how crypto could impact individuals, but what about the bigger picture? How could it impact society as a whole?
Ooh, now we're getting into the really thought-provoking stuff. Some experts believe crypto could actually disrupt traditional power structures.
Wow. Okay.
And lead to a more equitable and democratic society.
Okay. Those are some bold claims. How could that happen?
Well, think about it. Crypto is decentralized. That means it's not controlled by any single entity like a government or a bank. So this could give people more control over their own finances.
Okay.
And reduce their reliance on those traditional intermediaries. It's about shifting the power dynamic, you know?
Yeah, it's like cutting out the middleman, taking back control.
That's the idea. And it goes way beyond finance. Crypto and blockchain have the potential to revolutionize all sorts of industries, from supply chains and healthcare to even how we vote.
It's kind of mind-boggling to think about.
It is, but we got to be realistic, right? There will be challenges along the way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We can't expect a smooth transition to a crypto-powered world. There are technological hurdles to overcome, the regulatory landscape is still evolving, and then there's the whole question of adoption.
Right. Everyone needs to be on board.
Exactly.
Right.
For crypto to truly transform society, it needs to be embraced and used by everyone, individuals, businesses, governments, the whole shebang. It has to become woven into the fabric of our lives.
So it's a long game.
It is. It's going to take time, education, collaboration.
Well, one thing's for sure, it's going to be an exciting ride.
Absolutely. Any parting words of wisdom you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that we're not just passive observers in all of this. We're all active participants in this crypto revolution.
No, I like that.
The choices we make today will determine whether this technology actually lives up to its potential to create positive change.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So stay informed, stay engaged, and let's build the future we want to see. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cryptocurrency. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and as always, thanks for listening.